This is the Smash FM US Tour update. It's January the 5th, 2018 here in Australia. Hello and welcome. I'm Andrew Seabrook in Melbourne, and today we're catching up with Will Taylor, who's made it to New York and in the freezing cold has been taking in some of the sights and sounds of the city. Well, he did that yesterday, not so much today, but we'll hear more about that later. What we have to do is apologise to those people who tried to watch on yesterday. We had all sorts of issues going on yesterday, and just to let you know what's actually going on, unfortunately there is a CPU bug that's been discovered on all Intel chips, AMD chips, and even ARM chips, in other words, the things that you typically get in your smartphone. So everything that it's called, and the security violation has been dubbed Meltdown for the Intel chips and Spectre for the other chips as well. So everything from smartphones and PCs to cloud computing are going to be affected by the security flaw found in these chips. And what we were suffering from yesterday was that the cloud service providers, in our case Microsoft, were in fact going through the process of upgrading their systems to address this particular flaw. So it's quite a difficult one as well. But anyway, everything seems to have settled down, and we are back down here. So we'll bring in, at this point, we'll bring in Will, and we'll catch up with how things have been going over there in New York. No, we won't bring in Will. We'll bring in Will this way. There we go.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Will. So tell us all about your last few days. Perhaps if we backtrack and start with your exit from Nashville, Tennessee, and catch us up on the last 3 days of your trip.
Yeah, look, we left Nashville on on New Year's Day, well, it was a bit of a rocky road getting here to New York. Actually, from Nashville. Our plane actually was delayed about 35 minutes late, so we actually didn't leave Nashville to about 25 to half an hour to the scheduled flight, which meant, considering we only had not much time to get to Washington and make a changeover from Washington on to New York, was pretty scary for about 15 of us, including myself, who was on that flight from Nashville to Washington. So we end up arriving in Washington with about 10 minutes to spare, and then we all pretty much had to run from the terminal to the other terminal and try to get there in the time before the boarding gate closed. We all made it just, so we pretty much like 2 minutes to spare to get on the flight to get to New York. So it was pretty scary, but also shaky knowing that, you know, we all could be stuck in Washington, knowing that our flight was so delayed over in Nashville, because I guess what happened, without giving too much details into it, was that most of the, I guess, they were short-handed, I guess, over in Nashville. So everyone who took the flights out of Nashville about 6 o'clock, weren't going to get on the flight because their planes were going to be delayed, but this means 15 to 30 minutes. So it was pretty scary to know that we had to get on the flight and somehow get off the flight and get back onto our flight to New York. So pretty scary, but I must admit I want to personally thank, and for especially the 14 other passengers that was on that flight with me. We just want to thank United Airlines for helping us out to make sure that we made it to Washington, get off the plane at Washington to make sure we ran straight away to get onto our connecting flight for New York. So I just want to thank those amazing flight attendants and the pilot on that Nashville to Washington flight to make sure that we got to get onto our connecting flight on time. So yeah, just want to congratulate and thank them for it. So, and especially I'm assuming the other 14 passengers that was on the flight with us, who was also needed to go to New York, will be pretty thankful. So yeah, just want to thank them for that, especially from all of us to United Airlines.
So an eventful flight, and then you get into New York, and the temperature has dropped significantly. Just letting you know today, Will, it's going to be a balmy 28, 29 degrees here Celsius. Probably a little bit different where you are. Mind you, it's going to be 41 tomorrow, so you probably be happy tomorrow to know that you're in the right place.
Yes, it is -6 over here, which is and we've just had our biggest blizzard of the year here in New York. So that's why we're wondering why there's no pictures from today. Yeah, we couldn't actually get out. We all pretty much got snowed in here in New York City, especially where we are in Long Island. So yeah, we didn't do much. I went out for a brief moment to get some food, and yeah, let me say I did very well not to slip over and get myself all snowed in myself. So yeah, it was a pretty eventful day here in New York City, and especially for people who had to work today here in New York City. It was pretty eventful because obviously you couldn't really drive in. The best way was the subway, and even that was causing a bit of problems today. So yeah, it was a pretty eventful day here in New York City, that's for sure. And I guess I'm very lucky that I managed to stay in and rest up a bit more here inside, and hopefully look at the weather forecast for the next couple of days. No more snow, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it's going to be a fun time there as we swelter with, mind you, we'll be having the air conditioners on and pumping while you've got the central heating going. So it'll be good. But you did get out in the first couple of days you're in New York. You did get out a little bit, as the photographs behind us demonstrate. So tell us a little bit about what you got up to in the time you were able to actually get around.
Yeah, let's start off with it's actually funny. I didn't get to my accommodation at all until the Tuesday night. The Tuesday early morning. So it was pretty much sleep as much as possible, and then pretty much get straight into going on the road, I guess, because we actually got tickets to go to Madison Square Garden to see the Knicks and the Spurs. But we managed to get around, had a look around, and especially around the Madison Square Garden area. And I guess it's been, even though it was a very short walk, it's just being there and the hype around the Knicks, and especially around Madison Square Garden as we all try to get into the venue, was pretty interesting. And once you got in the venue, the history, everything else is just absolutely incredible. And just be part of being at the Garden, something I wanted to do for so long. It was something really special, and especially the tickets, what it worth. Managed to get an upgrade to probably one of the best spots in the Garden, as you probably will see with the photos. It will come through in your background very shortly, Andrew. But yeah, it was amazing, and something I'll never forget, even though the Knicks didn't win.
So we might just go to some of the photographs now, and you could perhaps talk over them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so that's right at the start of the night. So that's just in front of Pennsylvania Station, which obviously the station, the subway is actually below the Garden. That's their main, well, other than the Grand Central Station, Pennsylvania Station is the other main one where all the trains go to. Very similar like Flinders Street here in Melbourne, but obviously it's much bigger. Now, of course, the New York Rangers played the night last night. They're the other team that play at the Garden. Of course, as I said, the New York Knicks also play there as well. This is all done right at the front as you walk into the Garden, especially if you're coming from 7th Avenue. Now, that one there, you can hold it right there, Andrew, is the 1969-70 Eastern Conference Championships. There, which they won, of course, that was first, of course, they went on to win the championship against the LA Lakers. That was the 93, thank you, we'll just go back to that one now, as you just did. So that was the first, that was what the Eastern Conference trophy looked like, so a pretty big one, to say the least. And of course, that was their first of the NBA championship run for the New York Knicks. Moving on to the 93, the dunk, that was John Stark's jersey there. Of course, if you remember the dunk in Game 2 of that series against the Bulls, we got them up 2-0 in that series before, of course, they got swept by the Bulls 4-2 at the Garden in 93 Eastern Conference Finals at the Garden. And that's inside the Garden itself. Pre-game, most amazing stadium, something I'll never, ever forget going to, because it was the Knicks and the Spurs. And I must say, Andrew, they still got the same court announcers since they've had since 1989. So amazing. And just hearing their PA announcer voice, it just gives chills down your spine, because I watch, obviously, if you watched the 90s and watched the Bulls play, the Knicks play, and that big rival throughout those ones, that's the same voice that still does it today. So, which is Mike Bolszewski. So, fantastic career he's had so far, and I'm sure he'll be the voice of the Garden for a lot more, many years. So, fantastic. And that's where I actually sat, looking across onto the court, which is so when you actually watch it on TV, it's actually on the right side. So when you look from the TV, if you ever watch the NBA games on TV, especially when the Knicks are playing at the Garden, it's on the right side, on the right baseline, about 9 to 10 rows back. So amazing spectacle there at Madison Square Garden. That's halftime, or sorry, the start of the third quarter, I should say. The Spurs were leading at that stage, and as I said, the third quarter was really a blowout. The Spurs winning easily, there at the Garden by 11 points at the end of that game. So Patty Mills didn't do much at all. He got 3 fouls in a couple of minutes, but at the end, there wasn't really need. Kawhi Leonard did a fantastic job in the low post, even though he was not meant to play that game, of course, coming off an injury. But I guess it really didn't matter at the end, Andrew, as the Spurs won 100-91, and Knicks now drop out of the top 8 completely.
And of course, you need the selfies, don't we? Got to have a selfie or two.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So, most amazing venue, Andrew. And if you ever have a chance to come over to the US, make sure you get over to the Garden, even though the tickets are pretty expensive.
Yeah, tell us about that, because we might just sort of. Sorry, I just lost the audio for a second. Tell us about the price of tickets there. It's a bit different from the $3 entry into the local stadium here in Victoria.
It's a lot different to most stadiums in the US, Andrew. Not just us, but most stadiums in the US. So we'll talk a bit about Brooklyn a little bit later on. But I guess if you want to compare the two venues in New York in particular, as I said, I'll talk a bit about the Brooklyn game a bit later. But I'm going to use Brooklyn because of the fact that they're pretty close by. So Brooklyn's prices for the ticket that I got for the exactly same seat was about $90 US. The same ticket that I got for Madison Square Garden, and this is all in US dollars, not Australian dollars, is $350. So that's in that for the same spot. And because I got an upgrade across to the big one, which actually for the seat I ended up getting was actually 600 US. So it is so expensive, but for the experience and especially what the garden's all about and people just want to keep going there, it is it is well worth it. So, but if you ever want to come over and go to the garden and watch any NBA game or even an NHL game, be prepared to spend a lot of money on tickets.
So you did get out after that game. You got out to do a little bit of touring around. So we're starting to see some images in the background here now.
Yes. So this was the day after. So if we can hold that there, Andrew, if you can hold that shot right there. So the late night show with Jimmy Fallon. His show is actually it's not in a TV studio. It's actually in a theater. There at the Garden, in New York, I should say. As you can see there, of course, because his show is on NBC back here in America. So most of the late night shows, except for one, all been done in New York. So across all the TV channels here from NBC to CBS to ABC even, they're all been done in New York, but one show which is over in LA, which is the Late Late Show with James Condon, but everything else is all over in New York. So it's pretty interesting. I haven't had a chance to go in to any of these shows yet, but hopefully once the weather sort of goes away a bit, I hope maybe I might sneak into a show just to see what it's really like. So, but yeah, really interesting. New York City. I had a brief chance to have a look at Rockefeller Center and Times Square while I was over there, but obviously I'll have my big chance to have a look at those ones and have a bigger walk around in New York City tomorrow and also on Saturday before I head off to another NBA game coming up this weekend.
Yeah, so what are we seeing here? This is, again, some streetscapes.
Yeah, it is. They're in Manhattan. And so this is actually Upper Manhattan. I actually got off at the wrong stop at the subway. Actually, I might as well talk a bit about the subway because it was something that I was recommended to experience here in New York. So I must say, the subway is an experience. It's like if you're in Melbourne, and you know the City Loop, that's the City Loop or underground, and good luck getting reception in any of those places. That's the City Loop about, 30, well, I would say about 20 Ks worth of underground. So, yeah, I think that was interesting. That's Madison Square Garden during the day from the side. And, of course, that's the one that you normally see in the when you watch the NBA, that they'll see that side of it. If we actually, Andrew, can you just go back to that for a moment for me? And that, of course, that's from the side. But, yep. Okay, so TV will see that view as well as the one on the other side. So this is actually from the back of Madison Square Garden. And when we flick it across the next one, there it is. So that's actually from the front of Madison Square Garden as you walk in. And of course, and then also that's from 7th Avenue. That's still on 7th Avenue. And of course, the other side that you normally will see as well is actually from the 8th Avenue side, which is from the back of the garden. Now, that's the Barclays Center. Well, as we move on to the game that I saw there between the Nets and the Timberwolves, that was about 2 hours before the game. And of course, there's the mighty the dancers there at Brooklyn. It's very similar, I guess, the way they do things here, especially in Brooklyn. It's very similar to what they do when you turn up to a Melbourne United game at Hisense Arena. Very similar. What So what Brooklyn does is very, very similar to what Melbourne United does. I'm not sure Melbourne United picked up a lot of things from these guys, but it felt really at home. They actually, can you hold that right there, Andrew? Because that is the jersey retired numbers. Now, you might notice, Andrew, there's at least two of those names that we know very well in basketball and especially in the NBA. Can you recognise which one it is?
Apart from 23, I'm not assuming that 23 is the 23 that everybody wears, and potential. No. I can't. Unfortunately, I can't make out the names there. So you'll have to illuminate me. I'm not as up on the American scene as you are.
Okay. Yeah. So it's. Actually, I should say there is three names out there that most of our listeners would know. Number 5, right towards the right side, is Jason Kidd. So he's more famous in New Jersey when he played for the New Jersey Nets. Most actually there are the New Jersey Nets retired numbers, not the Brooklyn Nets, because they only just changed over a couple of years ago. Also there is Pete Maravich there, because the Pistol himself also played for the Nets. And the other one, he's actually more famous at Philadelphia than he is in New Jersey, because the Doctor, Julius Erving, they're retired number 32 for the Nets, which he played for the Nets in the old ABA days. So when the NBA and ABA both were separate entities before they both combined as one.
Now, if you'd asked me the questions about the Australian League, I probably could have given you those numbers, but well done. Well done with your history of US basketball. All right, so this is the pre-game, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yep. So this was pre-game entertainment before the game, and this is the shoot-around. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Brooklyn Nets having a shoot-around. Now, what's different about US sports that people need to understand when they come here compared to what we used to hear? Now, you know how we have a 5-minute warning, Andrew?
Yep, absolutely.
The introductions and the national anthem. Well, the US is quite different. They go right to the end until it hits 0. Then they do the national anthem, and then they do the introductions, and then the game starts straight after that. So that's something that people, if you ever come over here, or anyone from Australia that comes over, who needs to understand that it goes right to the end of the shot clock. The game clock would end up being 0. Then they go to the national anthem, and then they go to introductions, and then it's game time. So a very quick turnaround, all these things. So imagine, I guess, being doing the in-house entertainment for the Boomers, Andrew. How would you cope with having the national anthem? Going all the way to 0, then the national anthem, and then the introductions, and then game time.
I actually think that would be a much better way to go. That last 5 minutes of warm-up is everybody's warm. Everybody's ready to go. They've warmed up. They're ready to go. To me, it's a better flow. It's always hasn't made sense to me that we stop and we wait for 5 minutes and watch people just do layups or whatever. Let's get straight into the action. So, yeah, look, from an organisational perspective, it would be much, much more interesting along the way. Anyway, there's the scoreboards.
There, of course, over there are all jumbotrons. Over in that's the Timberwolves coming out, going to the dressing room after Brooklyn hit a big 3 at halftime on the buzzer. So they were pretty disappointed there, the Timberwolves. At the score, as you see, 48-43 at the half. Pretty good game, actually, Andrew. High quality game. If you actually looked at the standings and thought, was it worth coming to this game? Absolutely well worth coming to this game, because It was Minnesota, 4th in the West, take on the Brooklyn Nets, who were 12th in the East at the time. But it was so close right throughout. 2 days ago, they had the Brooklyn fans had very similar to this against Orlando, which they ended up winning by 3 points. This went right down to the last minute, and the Brooklyn Nets managed to win by 1 point, which actually, if you actually post, I shared a link from the NBA on the SmashFM Facebook page, the dying minutes of that game, you would understand why it was a pretty crazy game to watch there. So, and of course, that's their main entertainer there, of course, trying to hype everyone up at 3/4 time. But yeah, I'm definitely, of course, there's a couple more Brooklyn games left, so I'll be definitely coming out to that one. Now, T-shirt toss, that is one of the institutions here in the NBA here in New York City, or any NBA I would say, but only been to the ones here in New York City in particular. Now, you know how we do our T-shirt toss, right, Andrew, for Melbourne Boomers games?
Yes.
We've got nothing. We got nothing compared to them. They have this huge air blower thingamabobs, and they shoot it, the T-shirts out of that into the high, like, top tier stands, or anywhere for that matter. And so
Perth Wildcats Perth Wildcats do the same thing with little cannons, and I believe Melbourne United a couple of seasons ago were using them as well. So whether they still are or not, I don't know, because I haven't been to a United game for a while. But certainly over at Perth, it's a fairly big tradition, and they fire these red T-shirts into the sea of red, and it's well received there as well. So there you go, the obligatory, as we said before, the obligatory selfie. Will at the game just to prove that you were there, and that's basically it. We are through the clips along the way. So, and today not too much because of the weather there in New York. You were snowed in. You were saying.
Yes, we were snowed in here in New York, but more to the point, this whole eastern seaboard down to Washington just got absolutely smashed with snow and blizzards, and so most people didn't really go anywhere. It's actually funny, one of the news reports just happened here that I heard, or watched I should say, about 2 hours ago, that one of the NFL teams who are in the playoffs at the moment, which is New England Patriots, they had to train. And go to work today. Obviously, the downside was they were inside, not outside. But the blizzard in Boston, which is about 2-3 hour drive from here, was worse than what we had here. But it was still pretty bad. If you're in the US, especially the US tour teams, and you're in the snow at the moment, or getting caught up with this blizzard that we're having here at the moment, which is, please be cautious, and don't go outside unless you really need to, because you don't want to cause a collision or an accident or hurt yourself in this. So probably best today just to stay back, and then because the weather definitely is improving the next couple of days.
Right, so that's the report from New York, snowbound and blizzard conditions along the way. As I said, here in Melbourne, it's a little bit different. And I'll tell you what, talking about temperatures rising, what about the WNBL? How has that turned things on its head? What we were talking about yesterday, which unfortunately the viewers didn't get to see, technical difficulties and so on, but we were talking about how the fourth place Melbourne Boomers absolutely demolished the top-ranked team in the Perth Lynx. And then last night, Sydney, who had in the previous two outings had knocked off the Townsville Fire, came out and was absolutely belted up in Townsville by
45 points, wasn't it?
Something like that. Absolutely belted by the Townsville Fire. So it could be a very, very interesting series, and certainly we could see 2 versus 4, 2 versus 3 versus 4, 1 versus. We just don't know where it's going to go. It's absolutely exciting.
It's interesting that you said that, because I think the one thing we mentioned a couple of days ago, I think when I was in Nashville and when we were previewing this semi-final series, was that I think one of us felt that the Boomers and the Fire had to win their first game at home to have any opportunity to win the series, and they've both done that, and they've both done in convincing style. So all the pressure now are back on the favourites in Perth and Sydney to get it done at home, which is not easy to do.
No, but I'll tell you what, everybody wrote off Cheryl Chambers and the Sydney Flames last season. They wrote them off again this season, didn't think that they would be able to go back-to-back or even get into finals. They've proven everyone wrong. So maybe there are some adjustments that Cheryl will make along with her assistant coach and Karen Dalton. That will allow them to come out and put the fire to the torch. Excuse the pun. But
and I'll say
they'll do that. And again, it's with Perth. They're going to. We were talking about this a couple of days ago. When Perth goes back, they have a rabid fan base, rabid in the sense that they are loud, they are noisy, they're enthusiastic. They will fill the stadium, the Bendat Stadium, and don't be surprised if that series doesn't go to the 3 games. So I'm expecting 3.
Yeah, but don't be surprised because if there's any team that can combat or get used to that crowd, it's the Boomers. So and the players in the Boomers team have experience in hostile territory, especially being here in the US as well, in the NBA or internationally.
WNBA,
they'll be used
hopefully,
to this hostile crowd. Yeah, WNBA. But most of them will have been used to hostile crowds in front of big crowds because obviously we're used to it here in Melbourne, and some of them have had some experience over here in the US.
Yeah, look, I expect that, but you have to also remember that you've got a number of WNBA players in the Perth squad. They have had the experience of these full houses all season and last season. A big cry from their iteration when they were the Waves, and they were struggling to even attract a couple of hundred people to games. Since they've joined up with the Wildcats organisation, the professionalism of the club and the support of the fan bases has increased dramatically. So they're used to that as well. I really don't think that the prior experience of the players on both teams is in handling the crowd is going to be that different. But I know certainly that the noise of the crowd is going to definitely spur them on, and that's something that Rebecca Cole in the post game after the Boomers Lynx game mentioned that it was something that innovated. I'm putting words in her mouth, but it innovated her as a player and the team. So expect the same sort of thing for Perth. Be a bit more interesting in the Sydney game. Crowds not as large. Certainly there'll be a passionate group in there. They've got to have something in Sydney to cheer on. The Kings have imploded yet again, so hopefully the Flames can. There's too many puns, but hopefully they can keep the home fires burning, and come out and counter what looked to be it was the 3 tall towers for Townsville last night. It was the youngster, the ex-Perth Lynx player and Darcy Garvin. It was Susie Batkovic and Kayla George coming out, and they were the destroyers for Townsville last night. I mean, well supported by the other players as well, but that big inside presence and no let up from one rotation to the next rotation, it just destroyed the Flames. So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Correct. Well, I guess we're talking about injuries. Obviously, Beck Cole came back, played fantastic well, as we said. Of course, she came off an injury last week. Courtney Williams and Sam Whitcomb, how did they pull up? From your viewing position, how did they pull up? Because both of them had some injury worries going to game 1 and obviously game 2 and 3 in a quick turnaround.
Yeah, Beck Cole, start with that. So we're talking about the Melbourne Boomers Perth Lynx game, semi-final game 1. Beck Cole came off the bench. She probably, I can't remember exactly when she entered the game, but I think it was halfway through the first quarter. I think she ended up playing around the 27 minutes mark, and all smiles on the way out. But I'll tell you what, she was going home with ice strapped on her knees. So I think she's going to be fine, but she'll need to be managed through the game. So if need be, she'll be out there. She will work really, really hard. She just wants to play. I mean, that's the really big thing. Sammy Whitcomb didn't appear to have any issues. I didn't notice that she was favouring her hand. Of course, the week before she'd fallen and fallen on a wrist, and that was a shooting hand as well. She didn't seem to have any issues with it along the way. One doesn't know, of course, how much painkiller she had in her system. Courtney Williams, I thought a little bit down on her normal energy levels and so on. Interestingly, in the shoot-around pre-game, she tended to sit down quite a bit, and again, just not wanting to aggravate any injury along the way. The player I thought that had no or very little impact on the game coming back from injury was Dow for Perth, the other import. Right. And she really didn't have any import. The bigs for Melbourne did a fantastic job on her. Elizabeth Cambridge in the few minutes that she played, of course she got into foul trouble. She still had 2 fouls to give, but Coach Guy Malloy, I thought it was a really good decision. The bench players were playing well enough that he could actually protect Liz, and the gap and the score was sufficiently far apart that he didn't need to inject her back into the game and pick up another foul or a technical or any just protecting all of that. But Jenna O'Hay, Luella Tomlinson, and Ash Grant came out and they did an absolutely fantastic job on the Perth bigs. As well as Kalani Purcell, of course. So those five were really, really strong for the Boomers, and if they can deliver the same quality performance, it will be tough. It's definitely going to be, reliant on Alice Koenig, game high scorer of 22, Courtney Williams and Sammy Whitcomb to actually take the game on, because the other players, while they played well for Perth, just didn't deliver. Didn't deliver. And this was the thing that Andy Stewart mentioned in the post game, that he wanted better production from the guys. He was very, very concerned with the shooting percentage of his team.
The question you mentioned about Liz Cambage, and especially what Guy did to protect her and from not getting more fouls and all that. Was it, considering with the margin and all that, was it to really sort of get it get as much rest as possible, and I guess to sort of prepare for the next game, considering how well the bench was going?
I have no doubt that was. I mean, there's no point putting your player in. I mean, she was already on 3 fouls. Yes, she could have gone out there. She could have played another 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and so on. Perth targets her. I mean, this is, they double team, they triple team. They do a really good job of trying to get her wound up. And just by bumping little physical things along the way. And she takes a lot of punishment. There's a lot of criticism of her as in social media. But if those critics were able to actually get in there and look at what was going on quite objectively, they realise that there is an enormous amount of physical pressure put on her simply to try and nullify her height advantage and her touch around the basket. So, it's a tough gig. So I think Guy did exactly the right thing in bringing her back into the bench, letting her sit down. Let's have her fresh and firing for the next 2 games. She is such a danger that if she can rack up 30, 35 points in the game, and Britt Smart and Monique Conti and Beck Cole can do a good job on the guards, the Perth guards, then I think that Melbourne is in with a real shot. So, but we'll see how it goes.
Obviously, that game is on tonight, your time.
Tonight,
of course, yep. In Perth, game 2 of that series. I guess we might as well talk a bit about where the Perth-Melbourne series will end up going. Firstly, will it go to 3, and who will win it?
Well, as I said earlier, I believe that it will probably go to 3. And I can't tell you who's going to win. I honestly can't tell you who's going to win. If the Boomers can come out and play with the level of poise that they did on Wednesday night, I think they have a real shot. But it's so close. It's so absolutely so close.
Will you be surprised if it doesn't go to 3 and the Boomers sweep?
Yes, that will surprise me. That will surprise me. Look, there has only been one blowout game between these 2 teams all season, and that was on Wednesday night. It was close. I think it was an 18-point gap. I think
correct.
It hovered around the 20 points pretty much from the first quarter. So, it wasn't that Perth played badly after. Through the game. It's just that the Boomers played an awful lot better. So the games have been incredibly tight between these 2 teams all season. I expect it to be a very, very tight game. If either team gets up in the game tonight, it's going to be a very small margin. And who knows what will happen on a third game.
Which will be played on Sunday.
Sunday, yep. And then if the Boomers do get through, then there will be a Friday night game. So this is a week today.
Fine. Yes, yep. Which that will be the day I come back. So I don't know if I'm going to make the state basketball soon, because Boomers will have no home court advantage because they finished 4th on the ladder. So it'll be interesting to see what will happen there. Townsville-Sydney, on the other hand, I think this will be a different scenario. I think Townsville will probably sweep the Flames, even though I love Sydney, and especially Cheryl Chambers and the team. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I think Townsville will sweep them down in Sydney on Saturday, your time.
Yeah, I'd still put my money on a third game. I don't think that Sydney will come out and play that badly again. I'm only going from the box score and the play-by-play descriptions, but I don't think that they'll come out that badly. I think they have a few few irons that they can apply to the fire. But we'll see. You know, we'll see exactly what they can come up with. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting series. Certainly, I know that the Boomers supporters are hoping that it's a Flames victory because they've already got their accommodation and entertainments planned out.
Oh, Sydney.
I think having to go to Townsville might put the crimp in the travel plans of a few people, but you know, no, it should be an excellent series, as you know.
Yeah.
Well, it has gone 45 minutes in this little cross. We might.
Just before we do.
Yep.
Yeah. Just before we do, Andrew. We'll stay on NBL. We'll go to NBL just very quickly. Adelaide, what a revelation they've been the last 2 weeks because they've hammered New Zealand and now they've hammered Perth.
Yeah, that was last night, wasn't it?
It was, yes, 97-86 against Perth. So Adelaide are the only team to be in the top 2 teams this year. Twice.
Yeah. It was interesting because I actually didn't. I was going to watch that game and I ended up not being able to, and I didn't check on the box score this morning. So you'll have to tell us all about that.
Yeah, it was a great game. Adelaide, as they usually do, with Joe Wright and the team, compacted Perth's inside-outside players, and that's exactly what they did. They did so well to stop the perimeter shooting as well as the inside play, and Perth really didn't have a chance to come back. LA pretty much held that lead for most of the day and really caused a lot of problems for the Perth Wildcats like they did against New Zealand and the first time they played the Wildcats as well. And it makes it now interesting scenario because I think, as we said, the top 4 is already set, but they've caused a lot of problems for now the top, the chase for a top spot now because Perth, Melbourne and New Zealand are both 11 and 6, all separated by percentage and head-to-head.
Well, I'd like to say I told you so. Well, I'm going to anyway. I said that they'd be the top 4, and that's the way it's panned out. But you know, and I'm not so surprised with the results on the Perth-Adelaide game because the one team that has got a pretty good record against Perth, particularly over in Perth, is the 36ers. And for some reason, they just do really well over in that environment. Daniel Johnson, of course, being an ex-West Australian boy, so he's not too unfamiliar with it. But no, they seem somehow, and I don't know why, but they seem to be able to pull out the victories in against Perth when other teams really struggle. But yeah, they're going to be the top 4. I still think it'll be a Perth-Melbourne United final. That's where I'm going with that. But again, like the women's,
of course.
Yeah, like the women's league, it could go any way. It really could go any way. So this has been one of the things that even the bottom team, Sydney, can you know, if they get everything right, they can actually knock over even the top team. So it's been a fascinating series this year. All right, we need to finish up.
Yes.
We need to finish up. Thank you very much for sticking with us, ladies and gentlemen. We will try and catch up tomorrow. Will you be available tomorrow, Will? We'll try and catch up tomorrow and update you on Will's adventures in the US and some of the local news from Australia. See you then.